Good afternoon, everybody, and good morning to some parts of the world. And welcome to Coffee with the CEO, part of the Transport Evolution Digital Series. My name is Daniel Bloch. I'm the Portfolio Director of Transport for DMG Events. And it's a pleasure to have all of you here from more than 26 countries around the world. So welcome to everybody. We're going to have a jam-packed session for the next 90 minutes. First off, I'd like to introduce and welcome our guests for the morning. Firstly, to the Chief Executive Officer of the Walvis Bay Corridor Group, Mr. Mbahupu Hippie Chivekua. Good day to you, sir, and welcome. Glad to have you joining us. How's everything in Walvis Bay?
No, we are very good. I'm currently in Windhoek right now. We are under lockdown. Unfortunately, we are not very restricted to go out of the city of Windhoek. And those are some of the measures of COVID-19.
And as we're all having to take strict measures at the moment. So as long as everybody's safe there in Windhoek. And then also to Mr. Stan Whiting, a management consultant from Moore Global. Stan, welcome from Joburg.
Afternoon, Daniel.
Fantastic. And I'm hoping everybody's got their coffee mugs filled with coffee. Hence the name Coffee with the CEO.
I do have my coffee available. I hope all the other participants, they've got their coffee as well.
I'm hoping so as well. And we're looking forward to it. So once again, welcome to you both. We've come a long way in the last several months with COVID-19 regulations, lockdown. Unfortunately, none of our live events are able to proceed, having been postponed to 2021. And we have found that these digital series, the Coffee with the CEO, has been a fantastic way to bring together the industry, transport authorities from all across Africa, individuals from around the world, as we've mentioned. And the purpose is to share content, to share information, to keep people abreast of what is happening around Africa. And the spotlight's been on countries like Mozambique and Ghana for the last several sessions, and we're delighted that for the month of September, we'll be focusing on Namibia. And later on in the session, Stan will be inviting two of our other panelists that will join for the remainder of the session to answer questions. I invite everybody on the session, please, you can do a brief introduction on the chat function if you like, who you are and where you are from. And in the Q&A function, please ask as many questions as you like throughout the entire session. Stan and myself will be monitoring the questions coming through, and the entire panel will endeavor to answer as many of these questions as possible. We're also delighted to be partnering with the right kind of organizations, and I think Walvis Bay Corridor Group has been partnering with Transport Evolution for a number of years, been participating in our shows, and again, Hippie, we thank you for joining us today. Moore Global as well is partnering with us across all of our digital series. So thanks to Stan, your team, and Jeff, and we look forward to many more sessions, not just the digital, but seeing you all in person in 2021 as we travel to Mozambique, we travel to Ghana, and we travel to Durban for the Transport Evolution series. So without further ado, Stan, before I actually hand over to you, one more piece of information, because I know everyone's going to ask. This session is being recorded, so we will, in the next week, be emailing out the presentation by Walvis Bay Corridor Group, the recording as well. And if you would like more information, please just check the chat function. We'll let you know from DMG how you can contact me to get hold of these recordings, any other questions you may have about any of our live shows that are taking place next year, as well as some of the digital sessions that will be taking place in the next month or so. So Stan, without further ado, the floor is yours. Good luck, gentlemen, and enjoy yourselves.
Thank you, Daniel. Good afternoon, everyone from all over the globe. I believe we have guests attending today from as far afield as the USA, and obviously Africa is our core base. There's going to be an interesting session today. We have some very knowledgeable presenters, Mbahupu in particular, talking to us about the Walvis Bay Corridor Group. His presentation is centered around what COVID has done and how, and I think more importantly, how they intend coming through this and what the future looks like on a post-COVID basis. And I think that everyone in the room will probably be interested to hear what they have planned. He's going to be ably supported by Elias Mwenyo, the Business Development Manager at Namport, and also Leslie Mpofu, an Executive Director of the Trans-Kalahari Group, Trans-Kalahari Corridor Base. So yeah, I don't think there's too much more for me to add. I'm looking forward to hearing from the gentleman just as much as what you are. As Daniel has said, please put your questions through on the Q&A portion rather than on the messaging portion. That's easier for me to monitor. And we'll do our best to get those questions asked and answered by the right panelists today. Thanks. Mahupu, I'm going to hand over to you now. So if you can bring up your presentation and we'll all listen attentively. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Stan. Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen participating in this very important event. I was given a very peculiar topic of addressing COVID-19 recovery and what needs to be done to improve corridor efficiency in the handling of cargo. I'm very pleased to be part of this discussion this afternoon and also to be joined by the Trans-Kalahari corridor as well as also NAMPORT. Basically, the structure of my presentation is I'll just briefly get into what the corridor group does, the Walvis by Corridor Group in its core business, our service profile, our footprint, our wellness service, because COVID-19 is a wellness issue and it's a health issue. The impact of COVID-19 on the industry, what are the required interventions towards recovery and the way forward. Basically, I just briefly run you through our members are. The Walvis by Corridor Group is a public-private partnership consisting of various stakeholders such as the Port Users Association, Walvis Bay, Container Liners Operators, Namibia Logistics Association, Namibia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, NAMPORT, Namibia Transporters Association, the Walvis Bay Municipality, Transnamib, which is the rail operator, Roads Authority of Namibia, and the Road Fund Administration, as well as also 4 government departments, which is the Ministry of Transport, Works and Transport, Ministry of Trade and Industry, Ministry of Finance, as well as the Ministry of Home Affairs and Immigration. Basically, our service profile is that we do business development and trade facilitation along the corridors, and especially for the port of Walvis Bay, as well as the port of Lodrets. We also promote infrastructural development along the corridors and create a network between the stakeholders. And we also promote industrial value chains. And we are currently the champion of the Namibia Logistics Hub concept to position Namibia as a logistics hub in Southern Africa, in SADC. And we also do quite a very extensive and in-depth program in terms of wellness service, including COVID-19 response. So basically, we are headquartered in Windhoek, although we are called the Walvis Bay Corridor Group. We've got an office also in Lusaka, Zambia. We've got an office in Joburg, South Africa, and we've got an office in Lubumbashi in the DRC, an office in Brazil. We are planning to also take our footprint to Europe as well as Asia, just because of COVID-19, but we couldn't really go forward in terms of implementing some of these strategic initiatives. Basically, the wellness program is quite comprehensive. It's basically to develop a public-private partnership with the key stakeholders in the transport and logistics industry, basically for sustainability of the employees and the cross-border communities. We do quite an extensive wellness package. I will not go into the details thereof, but such as HIV/AIDS counseling and testing, ARV treatment and distribution, CD4 counts, HIV/AIDS treatment and care services, STI screening and treatment, smoking risk reduction counseling, and social behavior change, and other community communication tools. We basically also give quite an extensive service in terms of basic primary healthcare. We do a lot of testing as well as wellness service in terms of also extending to high blood pressure, looking at diabetes of the trucking community and the truck drivers, and such as also just taking their TB and cholesterol testing, as well as the condom distribution. But of late, we have also been very active in the support for COVID-19 testing and response. This is to see that the wellness model we do workplace programs, employee workplace programs, where we go to the various transport companies and provide them with service where we engage with the employees, and this is a very confidential service that we do and very professional. We also employ quite a lot of nurses, and of late we have also recruited graduate medical doctors to support us in our wellness service. We do all roadside wellness clinics. We have got a couple of them around Namibia, where we have taken containers and converted them into clinics. At this moment, we've got 6, and we are also trying to expand our service. We have got also mobile vans that are providing the service in terms of the outreach programs. And the picture that you see there is one of the testing centers in Windhoek, where we have we are sharing our mobile van as a testing facility here in Windhoek, together with the Ministry of Health. So those are some of the outreach programs that we also support and do, as you can see, with COVID-19 testing. And basically, we do this service on the 4 corridors, the Trans-Kunene corridor linking Namibia with Angola. We have the Walvis Bay and Ndola Lubumbashi development corridor, which is the Namibia, Zambia, and the DRC. We also have the Trans-Kalahari corridor, which is Namibia, Botswana, and South Africa. And in the south, we also have the Trans-Oranje corridor. Basically, what we do is that at this moment in time, is that we are making the health of our industry a priority by giving the appropriate support, in as much as we are also facilitating trade and the movement of cargo. Basically, I can just touch on what is the impact of COVID-19 on the industry. Basically, the outbreak of COVID-19 or the coronavirus in December brought about worldwide panic and business disruptions. The lockdown stopped most of the economic activities and operations with some services that were ongoing. The transport in the initial days were only limited services, putting other transporters or other economic activities in jeopardy. We have been also experiencing delays in the testing of truck drivers due to the inadequate testing facilities. Are we together? Okay. And then some of the truck drivers also, when they go to some of the points of interest, or they have been experiencing a lot of delays at checkpoints as well. The transit or final destination country, they have also been demanding a COVID-19 negative results. For example, if a truck is moving from Walvis Bay to Joburg through Botswana will be demanding negative results of the truck drivers. Otherwise, they will have to be tested at the borders. And once the results are out, that's when either the driver is allowed to transit. Otherwise, if the driver is positive, then there are quite some delays in terms of the movement of cargo. And basically, the supply chains, most of the supply chains around the world are disrupted, while some of them have unfortunately closed permanently. And it's also unfortunate that some of the years of hard work and savings in some of the operators have been completely erased because of COVID-19. And we are also experiencing some longer waiting hours at the borders in the roadblocks. We have got more roadblocks around where the trucks are basically have, and this is also creating some other impediments. And for a truck that has to go transit, I can give an example of the Trans-Kalahari corridor, 2 to 3 days from Walvis Bay to Johannesburg, it takes longer. And then it's also affecting in terms of the turnaround. We are also experiencing a general driver fatigue due to delays because the drivers have to wait for long hours at the borders and the checkpoints. And in general, the industry is also experiencing some COVID-19 fatigue response associated with the regulations, because the regulations now are quite stringent. It's not the normal movement of people and cargo as it was originally. And the mental health of the truck drivers and all others in the logistics and transport chain are also negatively impacted because some of them, they fear to contract COVID-19, others are suffering from COVID, and while some also are dying. So it's also affecting the mental health of not only those that are in the but also their families as well. The truck drivers and the frontline staff are heavily stigmatized and confined to isolation and unhealthy and often overcrowded quarantine facilities, especially at the initial stages. We could see that at some of the facilities where the truck drivers are taken, you find sometimes 200, 300 truck drivers without social distancing, and also where the sanitation on some of these come into question. The smaller owner truck drivers have suffered also due to lack of sufficient loads. The businesses are also compelled to, nowadays, most of the business, if not all the businesses, especially in our industry, are compelled to budget and divert funding towards safety and precautionary measures, such as sanitation and fumigation, and to buy PPEs, and also create additional workspace, because you want people to distance also at the workplace. And some have to also introduce some shift systems. And overall, some countries are also experiencing shortages of goods as governments have ordered some factories to close and workers to stay home. So what has been happening also is also that as I've indicated and alluded to earlier on, we've got abrupt closure of most of the borders posts and international entry points initial days of the outbreak, continued abrupt closures of key government institutions. This is a very important point that we need to also take into consideration, that you find at the borders, at the border point, where some of the key functionalities of the border, such as customs or immigration, are abruptly closed because one of their staff members have tested positive. And this is also creating some backlog in terms of work and congestion at the borders. Sometimes, especially in the initial days, we were experiencing some of the border posts that would be closed for a day or two. And it's quite difficult. I think most of the border posts now start to implement newer measures where, in case if there's a suspected positive case, where fumigation can just be done and within a few hours, then operations resume. We have also seen some of the borders operating hours were reduced, which was also a concern. In actual fact, I propagate and I believe that we have to make most, if not all, of the border posts now 24-hour operations, because we don't want any congestion to be at the borders. Some of the port operations were also scaled down because some of the admin staff have to work from home, or they have to make some alternative work arrangements. The truckers continue to be stigmatized, especially in the initial days. People were making a lot of noise about the trucking community, and in actual fact, the Corridor Group, with some of its partners like Namport and Engine, Namibia, we are planning to go out there and to have a campaign to thank the truck drivers for having run and risked their lives, especially, and kept our shelves at least supplied. Some of the truckers are also left stranded. Some of them dismissed and retrenched because when COVID kicked in, it brought in a lot of euphoria, and there was a lot of negativities. And some of them, some of the companies that could not sustain the workers, they have to also retrench or dismiss them. We have also been experiencing a number of roadblocks, increase in the number of roadblocks and checkpoints, as opposed to the normal ones, where some of times the truckers have to come and stop. Some of them have got livestock on, others have got time-sensitive goods and also temperature-sensitive goods, which they have to wait in long queues at some of these points. Initially, we also experienced a lack of appropriate quarantine facilities for truck drivers, and the overall cargo delivery is delayed. COVID-19 positive commercial sex workers have also been helping in contact tracing, especially when they test positive, then they will be able to indicate who their customers were. This whole thing is also affecting the implementation of Namibia Logistics Hub project in many ways. Most industry engagements have now been moved to virtual platforms, such as this one that we have. I must also mention that the Walvis Bay Corridor Group, together with Namport and the Walvis Bay Municipality and the industry, in the transport industry, we also help to support government set up a temporary truck port and quarantine facility in Walvis Bay, where we are also doing some screening for COVID-19. And ultimately, COVID-19 has become a new non-tariff barrier that needs to really be addressed. Now the question is, what are the required interventions to overcome COVID-19? Unfortunately, cargo cannot be moved virtually as we are talking now, or virtually, or having this session. It must be moved physically, and all institutions should institute guidelines for workplace preparedness towards COVID-19. It is indeed an imperative. Continuous stakeholder communications and engagements and collaboration is important. We cannot just fold our arms and wait for COVID-19 to go, but we need to continue with our engagements. It is also important that we need to have strong public-private partnerships. I can give you one example where we have been working, the Corridor Group has been working with Engine Namibia, An engine has been providing some fuel to the vehicles of the corridor group in terms of providing these essential services, the mobile clinics, to go to the important places where they're doing the screening and testing. And we need to have on-time problem solving. It's not time for us to delay in terms of decision making and to solve problems. It is also good for trucks to be continuously being fumigated, either at entry points or also at destination points, to curb the spread of COVID-19. We also need to use more of technology and social media, such as WhatsApp groups. I think my colleague Leslie will touch more on the corridor trip monitoring systems that has been developed. And the introduction of driver relay systems to expedite cargo. And this we experience it especially where a truck driver is moving a truck from, let me say, the Copper Belt in Zambia, coming to the Katima Mulilo Sesheke border post. And now, because Namibia will be requiring negative results of the truck driver, then we have facilitated for a relay system where a Namibian truck driver will take over the truck and take it to the port and back to the border, and then another Zambian truck driver will be moving the cargo. At least those measures, they really worked quite well. Whilst people were waiting for the results, we have to consider intermodal transportation where possible, promote that, and wellness centers and staff are equipped and positioned to support and complement government in the testing of COVID-19. Now, it is also imperative that we also need to note that the onus is upon every business to devise its own continuity strategies. There's no one-size-fits-all strategy at this moment for all the businesses that we are working with, but we need to get into the mode to normalize life and coexist with COVID-19. There's no need to close each and every business or government department once a COVID-19 case has been reported. It's very counterproductive, and we are going to lose a lot of productivity. In that regard, we need to also have expeditious decontamination of workstations. So basically, the upcoming projects for the Walvis by Corridor Group is that we are promoting the COVID-19 intervention and responses, including the establishment of increased or more wellness centers, such as in Kitmanshoop in the south of Namibia. We are also acquiring a new mobile clinic and establishing the 3 wellness clinics, as I've indicated, and establishment of truck ports, because these truck ports are very important. We don't have sufficient truck ports in SADC. And some of these truck ports are needed because the drivers need to go to a safe place where they can also get some medical support where necessary, and also for them to be able to rest to move to their final destination. So in actual fact forward is that we need to adjust to the new norm of life, work and social engagements, where we have to wear masks and social distancing, wash our hands and sanitize, and only move where it is necessary. We need to keep the supply chains and all the transport arteries 24/7 open in order for us to decongest the borders and seaports and other points of entry. We need to establish COVID-19 testings at all ports of entry. It is imperative because we saw that in the initial days is that some of the tests, they have to be ferried like sometimes 500 kilometers from the border post, or some instances like from Katima Mulilo to Windhoek, which is 1,200 kilometers. My belief in what we want is that at least at each and every border post, there should be COVID-19 testing and screening. We need to address COVID-19 as it is an NTB killing regional and international trade. And my take-home message to all the participants is that we need to strike a balance between COVID-19 and the economy. Otherwise, COVID-19 will kill the economy, and then it will have more devastation in terms of people suffering from hunger, poverty, job loss, and social unrest. And I would like to acknowledge our partners whom we have been working very closely with in the fight against COVID-19, such as the Namibian government, SADC, my good friend, Mr. Lavmo Ngadadi, and the Botswana government, the Zambian government, Roads Authority of Namibia, Namibia Ports Authority, Manica Group, USAID, Engine Namibia, Trans-Kalahari Corridor Secretariat, PEFA, GIZ, EPIC, amongst others. So basically, we are here to make the health of our industry a priority. I thank you in that regard. Stan?
Thank you very much, Bob. I want to congratulate you on a very good presentation. I think stakeholders, clients, suppliers alike will be feeling very comfortable in the fact that the corridor has a very distinct plan for COVID. You know what it has caused you. Everyone in the world knows what it's caused them, but you have the ability to control this pandemic, and congratulations on that regard. Before we bring Elias and Leslie in, I'd like to deal with a couple of questions that come through first, and they were actually questions that were top of my mind as well. I think just for the broader audience, if we could maybe just give them a little bit of an indication of what the corridor is made up of, who these stakeholders are, why they're there, why it's important that this becomes and forms a holistic business model, please, if you don't mind.
Yes, the Corridor Group is a non-profit Section 21 company, which is basically consisting of the stakeholders, as I've mentioned earlier on, from government, the private sector, where we bring about, it's a synergy, where we are basically talking about trade facilitation and business development for the Port of Walvis Bay as well as the corridors. I hope I'm clear on that one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. It's an interesting concept for those international views where we do have this collaborative effect that comes together very effectively, and it's all geared towards creating this logistics hub that can present the Southern Africa region to the rest of the world. Also then, I'd like to just go, we know that you have COVID under control, and we can see that you have a plan for that. How do you intend taking the logistics hub into the future? I think we can all agree COVID will come to an end. And as you point out in your slideshow, we have to get on with business. What are the projects that you could maybe make specific mention of now that you believe will have an impact? You've talked about the 2 new trucking stations. What else do you think could come through in that space? I think of projects that have been started there, like the sulfur bagging plant. I think of the Grootfontein Railway Hub, for instance, just to name a couple of initiatives that have already come through the base. And maybe you can expand upon that a little bit. Also,
Yeah.
let me just remind you that there could be quite a lot of good investors out there today, Paupu, that you could be addressing at this point. So make use of the opportunity.
Yeah, no, I think the logistics hub has been a very good concept that we have developed. We still promote that, and we are not veering off because of COVID-19. It's unfortunate that COVID-19 took center stage and disrupted a lot of our activities. That's why we have diverted attention towards COVID-19. But we remain focused. We want to achieve setting up the Namibia's logistics hub. Basically, there are some of the other complementary projects that we are also promoting, such as the development of spatial development initiatives along the corridors. There must be some of the activities that are giving the benefit to the communities along the corridors. We are also working very closely with the rail operators to ensure that at least there is intermodal transportation where some of the goods can be moved by rail and then road where possible. We are also promoting in terms of warehousing. We've been approached very recently by some very good and serious investors who are setting up a cold storage facility in Walvis Bay. But this is it will be one of the biggest cold storage facilities in Namibia to be set up. So basically, it's going to serve the corridors and the neighboring countries. So yes, there are also some other developments that are happening in our neighboring countries, which is very commendable. For example, now we have got the copper belt that is shifting in Zambia. If you go to the western province of Zambia, there's a lot of other mining activities that are happening, newer mines that are being set up. Botswana wants to set up new also copper and iron ore mines as well. So we are very excited, and we think that we are providing a very good opportunity in terms of the port of Walvis Bay to be the port of choice to export the goods out of the SADC region, as well as also to import goods into the SADC region as well.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that candid approach. I'd also, I think, let's give our colleagues a chance to add their voice to the presentation today, and maybe let's start with Elias. Elias is the Business Development Manager of Namport. If you could come in for a couple of minutes, Elias, and just give us your overview on the presentation today and what you think as a stakeholder to the group you could also be adding value. Thanks, Elias.
Thank you, Stan. Firstly, let me thank you for the privilege to be part of this platform. You are indeed doing a great job for the industry. Well, let me shine some light on Namport's experience in this unprecedented period of COVID and share lessons learned that are geared to enhance the port performance while the world is gradually opening up and strengthen port connectivity both by land and sea. As you know, maritime transport is responsible for carrying around 90% of world trade, and shipping is the lifeblood of global economy. As ports, we play a key role of transferring cargo from one mode of transport to a different mode of transport, with the aim of seamlessly delivering the goods at the final destination. EP's presentation really covered the details of what the industry went through during this period. And from the port perspective, in response to to the need to curtail the spread of COVID-19, we as NAPOD also took some drastic measures, yet keeping the port operational. We, for example, had to reduce the number of vessels that could handle at a given time alongside. We had to halve the number of gangs and allow some of our employees, especially on the administration side, to work from home. But interestingly, it also gave us an opportunity to test the capabilities of the new container terminal that have been 1 year last month. As you know, we inaugurated a new container terminal in Walvis Bay on a 40-hectare reclaimed land. So really it gave us an opportunity through trial and error to test how efficient or effective this new terminal could be. We recorded notable milestones such as handling of bigger vessels with a carrying capacity of beyond 9,000 TEU. That was actually one of the greatest highlights. And also we managed to handle or load 40-foot reefers on a single vessel. I think that was one of the highest number of container loads in Southern Africa. Through that, as you know, during the initial period of the COVID disruption, shipping line also had to realign their network. We saw a lot of transshipment volumes coming through. And all these developments happened during the time that our employees had to handle equipment for the first time in Namibia, like the ship-to-shore cranes. I mean, we never had this equipment before, but during the initial stage of COVID, our employees had to hit and run. I must say that they did not disappoint us, and we remain proud of them. So all in all, Stan, we see a greater future going forward with the new terminal that is also supportive of the Logistic Hub initiative. I really see that with this infrastructure, the corridors will perform better going forward.
Thanks very much, Elias. Just a quick question from me before we take some more from the floor. Costing structures in the port, how are you going there? How competitive do you think you can be eventually if you get the right sort of capacity through there? Are we going to be able to be competitive with those ports, for instance, in South Africa, that carry the bulk of the cargo at this point in time? Where do you see your plan of action going to from point of view of upgrading, etc., and getting your cost structure into line?
Well, our strategy is to invest heavily in technology. We have already applied port technology that is currently running the terminal. I'll say that the terminal is currently semi-automated, and in that, with that, we believe that it will definitely reduce the cost of doing business. And the other aspect also, when we look at our cost structure, we are very open to engage with our clients to put up competitive structures that will allow them also, you know, to at the end of the day be able to compete turn around their vessels more cost effectively at the port of Walvis Bay. As we speak, we actually have a cost structure that is somehow discriminative, but it's really geared to encourage the use of our corridors. We have corridor rates that are discounted at a level where we think we are more competitive, just to make sure that at the end of the day, our corridors remain more competitive and cost effective compared to others.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Elias. I think that's what people are looking at here now. Again, COVID is here. It's done what it's done. It is what it is. You guys have good restrictive programs in place, but this is important for people to know post-COVID, I guess, is how we're going to take this corridor forward. Fantastic platform that's been set up. How do we keep making that competitive? And I thank you also for the candid answer. Thank you very much. Let's bring Leslie in for a little chat and see also from the Trans-Kalahari side as a stakeholder. I think you saw from Bahupu's slideshow that there are 2 or 3 very, very critical corridors that also service the Namibian ports, and the Trans-Kalahari is one of those. So let's give Leslie an opportunity also to comment on the presentations to date and see what he thinks the future looks like, if you don't mind, Leslie.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this important discussion or engagement. And let me also thank Mr. Chivikwa for the very, very informative and timely presentation. Maybe let me just start by saying the Trans-Kalahari Corridor, the Secretariat of the Trans-Kalahari Corridor Management Committee, that or TKSMC, an organization that was established by the governments of Botswana, Namibia, and South Africa. The establishment of the TKSMC was influenced by the desire to achieve trade facilitation objectives and deeper regional integration as espoused by SADC and as well as SACU and NEPAD. This includes the implementation of harmonized processes and procedures that promote integrated and seamless movement of goods and persons along the TKC. The goal hitherto is to reduce transport costs and improve transit times in order to increase competitiveness of the member states and as well as of SADC. For distribution in the regional as well as the international markets. The governments are represented in the TKSMC by permanent secretaries of the or director generals of the member states ministries of transport. The TKSMC was established in 2003, and the secretariat itself was established in 2007. So they've been to simplify cross-border transactions and customs operations along the corridor, as well as to facilitate the movement of goods and persons on the TKC by simplifying and harmonizing the requirements and controls that govern the movement of goods and persons with a view to reducing transportation costs. As well, one objective also is to integrate the spatial and economic development along the corridor, so that the corridor does not only become a transport corridor, but is an economic or a developmental corridor, as well as to promote integration, deeper regional integration by harmonization of conflicting regulations. So the secretariat or the TKSMC is actually pinned against through 4 important pillars. which are organizational efficiency, border management, stakeholder engagement, as well as security and safety, which is quite key for us, because we are saying for us to actually promote the corridor and for investors, like Stan has already mentioned, for investors to actually come into the region and also invest. They want to know that there is actually a corridor which is safe and secure, that they can channel their products or through to the markets. So this is why the TKC was actually implemented. Now, of course, the work program is a robust trade facilitation program that seeks to support effective and trade facilitation, like I said, which of course trying to lower trading costs. The TKSMC is cognizant of the fact that transport operators and traders choose their routes based on the performance of the corridor. And these performance indicators are the distance-related operating cost, the transit or travel times, the predictability of the transit, the reliability of services along the corridor, as well as safety and security, and the hospitability of the corridor. So these are quite important. Hence, Hippie was talking about all the developments that we want to see on the corridors. These are therefore paramount for the TKCMC to remain a corridor of choice and thereby achieve its vision of being a leading corridor in trade facilitation for socio-economic development as well as integration. Now, the advent of the COVID-19 impacted greatly on the work of the TKCMC. And most programs could not run, and we could not execute quite a number of projects because negotiations between the member states were stalled. And because for whatever negotiations that we need to undertake, whatever decision that needs to be undertaken, member states have to sit down and negotiate. So, so hence we had quite a number of challenges regarding that. Of course, virtual meetings have been hosted. Some have succeeded, some had failed because of member states being engaged in fighting the COVID-19. Because you know that most of our stakeholders, they're actually in the forefront of the fight against COVID-19. Movement on the corridor was also affected. Some borders were closed. Hippie has already mentioned this. And only essential goods allowed to move. And of course, with time, all other goods were also allowed. This impacted greatly the volumes on the TKC. For example, if I just give an example, last year, in August last year, at the Trans-Saharan Corridor border, which is also known as Great Post border, there are 2,168 trucks use the border. This year, same month, same August this year, only 823 trucks use that border, a reduction of 63%. This is quite important to note, and it's quite disturbing. And the last year as well, in July last year, the same border had about 12,000 declarations. This year, July, only 2,000 declarations. So these figures actually show that the impact, COVID has had on the corridor, and by impacting the corridor, it impacts the economies of the member states, because it means that the imports and exports, they are not moving as they ought to move. Just like EP did mention that the issue of supply chains, they are affected. The TKCMC, of course, we are optimistic that growth and volumes that have experienced a downward spiral will recover in due course. And we are saying what is important is that this recovery, of course, it has to be impacted, or it has to be influenced by a number of issues or policies at national level as well as regional level and continental level, and this is, to us, is quite key. Regional integration, for instance, the harmonization of conflicting regulations. COVID-19 has exposed that we are having a serious challenges in this regard. Some decisions have, some decisions have been made previously to have these harmonized, but sometimes the slow movement of implementation is a challenge. Hence, we are saying COVID has also exposed some of this, that we need to move faster. For instance, the development of regional industrial policy. SADC is worked on this, but we need to move now to adoption as well as implementation of the industrialization policy, so that this can impact on the economies of member states. So, because industrialization is quite key to promote a movement. Innovation in the facilitation of trade, implementation of smart corridors, yes, whereby now we have less movement, less contact, and between the border management, border authorities, as the travelers and transporters is quite important. The virtual queuing of vehicles, for instance, and we know that Go Swift developed a very important system in Estonia, which is used in many parts of Europe, and we are saying this can actually help in terms of virtual queuing of vehicles, pre-clearance, cargo and vehicle tracking. These are quite important, and these are also inspired by CTMS that he did mention, the corridor trip monitoring system, that SADC has developed, and we are happy that TKC has actually been nominated together with Walvis Bay and Dollar Corridor to pilot the system. So these are quite important. In linking Africa, these are important, that corridors should be there in terms of road, in terms of rail, to link Africa, so that we can re-energize the economies, so that we can recover from COVID-19. Hence, we have the African Continental Free Trade Area that member states have committed to. These are quite key for us to member states to be able to recover from COVID-19. And probably what can I say also is that there's a need also to build back better with private sector as the driving force. By so saying, I'm saying we need a resilient private sector. So as we rebuild the economies, the private sector needs to take center stage to be able to actually to energize, the economy, and as well as the deliberate effort to support the private sector by member states and by governments. This is quite key. By coming up with stimulus packages, I know that our governments did actually come up with stimulus packages, but implementation and realization is quite key. That these stimulus packages are important to re-energize the private sector, for them to actually be able to deliver and have our corridors performing and the volumes growing to what they used to be, even beyond. And lastly, let me just say thank you also very much, and thank the Walvis Bay for the opportunity. And these, I believe that they are key issues that we need to deliberate on and see forward and see that we move forward in terms of implementation, so that we can see our member states recovering from the dent that COVID-19 has actually put on the economy. With that, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Leslie. And once again, I think a very well prepared Trans-Kalahari corridor for its COVID implementation, what needs to happen during and through the COVID base. And what I see and hear from all three of you gents is this element of the PPP, looking at the private sector to come through all the way and make sure that we can build upon the base that's there. Just for you quickly then, Leslie, any current initiatives that you could share with us? Obviously, we wouldn't want you to share something that's still being negotiated, but are there any tidbits that you can throw us, people that have approached you from the private sector to have a look at what could go forward? And the same question to Bahupu and Elias as well. Are there any distinct examples you could share with us today? Let's start with you, Leslie. Is there anything?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. Of course, currently I'm not at liberty to say I can divulge who, but we have had indications whereby some private sectors, they've approached us to say that they want to develop certain special initiatives along the corridor. We have investors that have approached us from South Africa, who have actually returned to us, who are actually in partnership with other investors from overseas, from the States, that said they want to come and invest. We have had some investors also here in Namibia who have approached us, and we have had quite a number of engagements with them, who also want to come up with investment along the corridor, putting up container terminals as well as truck stops along the corridor. Yes, we have had also others saying they're interested in tourism along the corridor. One in point was saying they want to look at cultural tourism along the corridor to so that can actually uplift the lives of the people along the corridor. Yes, but these are still at initial stage, whereby they are actually saying this is what we want to do. But at this point in time, I think it will be for me to actually say these are actually going to materialize, because now the governments also have to come in with the licenses and the other negotiations and all that. Yes, we are just providing the advocacy part. Yes.
Thank you. Thanks for that. And that sounds promising. And we wish you the best of luck with those negotiations and hope they come through. Bahupu, anything from your side on that topic? Any particular initiatives right now that you think are going to come through and be exciting?
Yeah, Stan, I believe that going forward, the private sector needs government, government needs the private sector. We all need each other. Government must create an enabling environment for business to thrive. And we cannot expect government to put all the infrastructural investments in most of these projects. Otherwise, because they've got competing priorities in terms of housing, social services, education, and all these kind of things. But the private sector is willing to mobilize funding and resources to facilitate some of these initiatives. I want to touch on just a few projects that I perhaps think off the cuff now. For example, one of them is the, and I'm sure Elias is going to touch more in where the old container terminal of the port of Walvis Bay will be utilized for something. And we need the industry, we need the mining community, and for them to make sure that this new space is filled. And I'll leave that to Elias. We need to create transshipment hubs in terms of where the rail link ends, and that's where the road can pick up as well. Like, for example, I'm sure we've been talking about Walvis on the eastern side of Namibia, the Grootfontein railings. And one of the big projects that we have been speaking about for a number of years now, the Trans-Kalahari rail link. And my belief is that it's a very expensive project. It needs a lot of volumes, but it also needs the private sector to invest into some of these projects. We've got the port of Lutherets now, which is in terms of capacity, it's a small port, the port of Lutherets. But with industry, we can work out mechanisms and ways where a new area has been kind of identified, where I'm sure Mr. Elias Mwenyo will also touch into that. It's called Angra Point, where a new facility can be created in terms of accommodating more volumes, especially from the Northern Cape in terms of exports. And I think those are the kind of projects that I can touch off the cuff at the moment.
Okay, I really appreciate that as well. Thank you. Elias, from your side, Bahupu has thrown the ball in your court. Let's have a listen.
Yes, then I think Hippie have really covered bulk of some of the initiative. But what I would want to add is that the Namibian government have adopted measures to meet the infrastructural development needs of the country by leveraging on private sector.
I think we've lost Elias there for the second. We'll get him back. And maybe for time being, we'll just, I have about 18 odd questions here. I think, Bahupu, I'm going to...
from the Northern Cape.
You're back. Sorry, Elias, we lost you there for a little while. Sorry. But please continue.
I said the government has adopted measures to meet the infrastructural development needs of the country. So PPP, private partnership initiatives were identified as one of the strategy to come up with infrastructural development. So I was just making a reference to a success story of late, and that is the establishment of warehouse facility at the port of Lutherets that's currently handling manganese ore out of the Northern Cape for export to the Far East. And if I look at Walvis Bay, there are so many projects that we are working on after the commissioning of the new container terminal. The old terminal have actually created capacity for the handling of break bulk commodities. As you know, the port currently serve the mining activities in Zambia, in DRC, and one of the most important mining input that is so much in demand is sulfur. So we are working with the private sector to put up infrastructure at the port to be able to have bulk sulfur handled through the port of Walvis Bay, and that in return will give us more copper out of Zambia and DRC. Basically, it will balance trade. Of late, also, there's much interest to put up warehouse facilities inside the port for value-adding activities. So, although there's indeed enough or sufficient opportunities that can support the logistic hub initiative, initiative and keep our corridors busy.
Thank you very much. Thanks, gentlemen.
Yes,
We
Stan,
have probably got about, yes, sure, Leslie, please go ahead.
Yes, no, I just wanted just to say that a short one, that just like Hippie was saying, the TK rail is quite critical. And maybe just to say that the two member states that are responsible at Namibia and Botswana, they are very committed in the project. And project management offices actually been established, and the two member states have actually engaged the coordinators to actually to see that the project goes ahead. So we are confident that it's a project that we maybe in the long run, because obviously it's a very expensive project, and a project that can take quite some time before we actually fruition. So, but we are now confident that something is happening, and we should be able to something very soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. Chaps, we've got about 15 minutes left of the regular time. Sometimes we're allowed to go over, but we have a few questions. And so can I just ask, I'm going to direct all the questions at Bahupu, and if he feels one of you two gents are better placed to answer such questions, I'm sure he'll pass the ball down the line, yeah? And I think let's keep the responses fairly short. We are a little bit out of time now, but to all of those of you who have asked questions, there will be a full response at a later date from one of the gents. No problem with that. Okay, we'll start with, and this one is, I think, a very valid question from Henk. Just let me also say to those of you who have posed questions, some of the questions have been answered, I feel, in the structuring of this at the moment. So I'm going to go past those, but if you feel that they need more answer, please put it in writing to the event organizers, and we'll make sure we get a response back to you guys. So the one from Henk Bahupu is about road to rail, road versus rail. We hear a lot today about trucks and trucks piling up at borders, etc. Obviously, one of the key solutions to that is to get more cargo on the rail. I know we do not have a Trans-Nalma representative today, but perhaps we can ask you to field that question quickly.
Yeah, I believe that rail is intrinsically made to transport more goods than the road. And we need to preserve some of our roads, infrastructure as well. And for me, is that it is important that we need to have seamless rail connectivity amongst our neighboring, amongst the SADC countries. It is important that there are some alternatives in terms of trade routes for some of our neighbors of Namibia. It would have been very good if to have a rail link, like the TKR that I'm talking about, from all the way from the Mamabula area in Botswana, all the way up to Walvis Bay. Equally, it will also be good if we can have rail links from all the way from the Copper Belt or even the Lubumbashi area, all the way up to the port of Walvis Bay. It's unfortunate that we have some of the links that are broken, like from between Grootfontein and Katima Morilo. But also, I think this is some of the strategic and more long-term considerations that we have to make, because it's quite capital intensive to invest into some of this, and you need to really have secure the volumes. You cannot expect governments to invest, or the private sector to invest in some of this infrastructure, but there are no volumes. They need the returns on their investments, and that is.
Couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, and that probably is the biggest hindrance then, is making sure that there's sufficient capacity. And I don't, we know a little bit about rail logistics in the SADC region, and I don't think that's your biggest problem. I would guess that it's about funding at this point in time, is to make sure we get the correct sort of funding in place and get those train sets running, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next question is from Jean-Michel. Wants to know about the National Single Window Project. Can you give us an update on that project?
I think, let me pass that one to Leslie, because he's been working very closely on that one. Leslie?
It looks like we might have lost him, but I'll come back to that question. Let's keep going.
I think he's
there we go. Leslie, the question's about the National Single Window Project. Can you give us a quick update on that, just very quickly?
Well, the National Single Window Project is a project that has actually stalled for quite some time between the member states. I know Namibia. I think they actually gave that responsibility to NAMPOT to actually work on that. I know that last year some bids were floated. I don't know actually how far that went, but member states through SACU, they are working towards that. And one of the challenges that we've been having as issues of sharing of information, and we're supposed to have a meeting together with Botswana and South Africa in March, whereby we will discuss more on sharing of information, and but that meeting was actually stopped because of COVID. Yeah, so we are yet to actually have that meeting, and we are hoping that very soon the negotiations should be able to start. But I know for Namibia, the single window, it was actually given to NAMPO to champion. I don't know, maybe Elias can actually talk more on that regarding how far they are in terms of implementation. Yes.
I think just due to the time constraint, perhaps we might want to formulate an answer to that in writing at some point in time, and I'm sure that the eventing company will give us the names of the details of the people that would ask for that type of response. But thank you, Leslie. Valerie has asked a couple of questions. I think, Valerie, the corridor interaction question, I think probably has been asked and answered in the course of the three speakers. Then we have a very distinct question from Valerie regarding the EPZ zones and how that is coming along, and how is that going to form a part of post-COVID type growth. Are you happy to take that one, Mbaupu?
Well, EPZs are important for the economy. I know that in Walvis Bay, there were some EPZ activities that were also identified. And one of them has been the fact that there is some quite extensive industrial land in Walvis Bay, where economic development activities are taking place for export processing in that regard. Elias, I think you're better versed on that one, isn't it, Elias?
Well, the EPZ currently rests under the Walvis Bay municipality, and we have seen, there are still few companies that are still operating under the umbrella of EPZ. It reduced significantly from, I think there were 100 and something, 100 companies, and now there are only 4 or 5 that are operational. So on that, I don't really have much details.
Okay, perhaps, gents, we can ask you also to formulate an answer there and get it through to the eventing guys. Thanks. A message from Dorcas. He asks about the balancing between COVID and the economy. I think that one has been asked and answered. I think you fellas have done a very good job of putting that position across. Mvuselelu, he wants to know about SME participation in the PPP. Are there any particular programs there for small, medium enterprise to get involved in the corridor down the line?
Well, I think from a port perspective, for SMEs under the transport and logistic umbrellas, there are a lot of value-adding activities where they can participate. And this is brought about by COVID. As you know, one of the COVID protocols really is to minimize the movement of people. And what we have seen, the value-adding service that has been driven by the SMEs is the provision of service drivers. We handle a significant amount of used trucks that are destined for the neighboring countries. And what we have seen is that the Namibian service drivers, they will take the trucks from Walvis Bay up until the border, and then thereafter do the transfer, whereby a Zambian or a Zimbabwean driver will then take the truck from there for onwards delivery. So these are just some of the few value-adding services that we believe that the SMEs can also play a significant role.
Excellent.
And yes, can I add to that? From my observation is that we do have some SMEs also in the transportation sector, the trucking community, where you find either a driver owner company or someone owns 2 or 3 trucks. Those are SMEs compared to the large ones. But they have also been severely affected, as I have indicated earlier on in my presentation, that some of them were restricted, especially at the onset of COVID, where perhaps they were not transporting essential goods and they had to be stuck and park the trucks for some time until some of the sectors of the economy started to drive. We do promote not only SMEs, but it's a very good question that was posed out there. But we need to promote women and youth in the transportation and the logistics sector, because these are very imperative key functions of our society. We want to see more of the truck drivers also becoming women and the youth as well, because some of the truck drivers are also aging. We've been promoting, the Corridor Group at this moment have been working very closely with the German government in terms of the charcoal production happening in north central Namibia, in the areas of Oshiwarongo or Tavi, where there's a lot of bush encroachment. Now, what is happening is that they are creating opportunities in terms of value chains where the encroached bush is converted into charcoal or wood chips, or also some fodder for the cattle. So these smaller producers or the SMEs are producing this, but they are also creating some value chains in that regard. So definitely we promote that, we take note of that. If you have good ideas of how we can also to become catalyst in terms of bring in more SMEs, definitely we do have a lot of, we can support them as well. And SMEs does not necessarily have to be the actual, but it's also about the intellectual property. if we have got some youth or women or young people out there who are coming up with very innovative ideas, how to improve the supply chains, how to create maybe apps, new apps to solve a lot of problems that we have along the corridors. Those are some of the things that we need to welcome, we promote them, and these people get the value for money for what they create with their minds. Stan?
I think it'd be, yeah, thanks. I agree with you completely on that space. Perhaps there's a portal, something that we could make known that that these questions can, or suggestions can be forwarded to someone. If you have a specific system that deals with this type of inquiry, perhaps you could also let us know what that is then.
The corridor group has got a department basically working on these specific projects, such as special development initiatives, value addition along the corridors, truck ports, and all these initiatives. So we do have a department that is dedicated towards that. One of my colleagues, Mr. Boyce, is the one leading that. So definitely we are willing to embrace this and also to support.
Perfect. Gents, we've got to the end of our time allocation, but if everybody's good to go for another 10 minutes, are we good for that? All good?
Yes.
Yeah, let's push ahead. We have questions from Adrian and Victor that want to deal more into the actual statistics, the numbers. I think Leslie did give us an indication of just how badly the drop-off was during COVID. But I don't think we were geared for those type of questions today, Adrian and Victor. But again, let me ask Bahupu to put something together there just on basic what pre-COVID, during COVID, and what we expect post-COVID those numbers to be, yes? Just on general cargo movement in the different sectors.
I'll just give a general. We as a corridor are affected. We have been affected by the shock waves of COVID-19. In actual fact, we were, the last year, we reached some milestones in terms of the corridor volumes, where we reached a milestone of 1 million tons on our corridors. But now that benchmark is under threat because there were a lot of disruptions and cargo could not move, and still cargo somehow it's impeded to move. Where we have a situation where in terms of the volumes, they have dropped a month, in average, if you compare this year to last year, almost like with 35%. So it's quite a huge drop in terms of our volumes. And that is something that we are confident that we need to revive and get even better results.
Maybe if I can add from the port perspective, we were also, I'll say, mildly affected. On, if I can refer to the container handling, side, our exports dropped with almost 14% in comparison with last year. If you compare it for the period March to July, and our export also dropped with 8%. But what we have seen that have actually increased significantly, that is the transshipment volumes. Basically, this is cargo that only remain in port with a final destination other ports along the west coast of Africa. On that, we've seen a growth of almost 300%.
Fantastic. Thank you. So again, if those numbers can be kind of tabulated some way and just put into some sort of presentation, that would be great. Marie has asked a couple of questions. One, the sulfur bagging plant. How could people get involved? So this presentation is having a good effect if that's the case. So maybe again, if we could ask Marie just to contact the corridor and see how you can maybe get involved in that. She also asks a question about Class 7 commodities. Are we moving them? Are we entitled to move them? Are we compliant?
On that, just to provide comfort, the Port of Walvis Bay is classified to handle Class 1 commodities. So Class 7 is something that is commodities that we can handle.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully that does the trick there. Marie, if you can contact guys about the sulfur bagging plant, is that okay? Baupu, that someone comes in and talks to you guys about that project?
Yes, I know that at this moment I was recently informed that outside 90 kilometers from Walvis Bay in Arandis, they are setting up a sulfur bagging plant, which is going to supply the markets in Zambia and the DRC. So yeah, certainly I think it is it's something that we can look at.
Yeah. So staying with sulfur, Elias, Vic would also like to know, apparently we are getting more and more involved in the sulfur storage base, and there is an upgrade planned. Is there any detail on that at this point in time?
Stan, I lost you there.
Sorry, again, this question
I
deals with
lost
sulfur.
you.
Have you got me now? No. Okay, we'll get back to Elias there. It's obviously a link problem between him and myself. Then we have a couple of questions around the trucking scenario, which I feel have been answered, but just in case, questions that deal with foreign drivers and local drivers and how you guys controlling that job creation space and ensuring that local drivers get their fair share of the deal. Any, Mbaupu, can I leave that one with you, or is there more, Leslie?
Yeah, I can perhaps start to say our economies are interconnected, interlinked, interdependent. We have seen some uprisings like in South Africa where the truckers are demanding that they have to do, or the drivers are demanding that they have to do the jobs. I think it's a bit of a narrative where we have to look beyond that now. What I mean is that we cannot confine certain areas of our economies or countries just to specific. It's not working appropriately in the supply and logistics chain. It's more economic and more makes more financial sense to these operators, because if a driver has to drive from Walvis Bay all the way up to Joburg, so be it. If a driver has to drive from Durban to the DRC, so be it. And that is what has been happening. I don't think there are any job losses or job threats, in my view, at this moment. But what is convenient, the industry itself is in such a way that we cannot allow to have xenophobic tendencies and sentiments being thrown all over. I'm sure as we are living as neighbors, Namibia is willing to accommodate drivers from all over, whether it is from Tanzania or South Africa or Zimbabwe and so on. But we need to discourage some of these things that has been happening. And I must also mention that at this moment, our corridors have also been ranked as some of the safest as well, in terms of there are not violent activities that or disruptions that are happening along our corridors. In actual fact, in Namibia, there is no trucks are not being escorted. There's no security escort for the trucks because that's how safe it is. But when you move some of the copper trucks, that when you're moving from the DRC into Zambia, and the moment they cross into Namibia, they don't have escorts because that's how safe and it is. And so these are some of the competitiveness that we have along our corridors as well. We know that in some other countries, for example, like in South Africa, there's a lot of hijacking that is taking place. We need to really discourage these things to happen because they are affecting the economies, but they are affecting the lives of the truck drivers are a threat. We've seen them being torched, being mutilated, being killed. And this is not something that we need to really support as a region. We need to really discourage.
Your point is well made. Thanks very much.
Yeah,
and hopefully that answers the question.
I just wanted to add there to say that the issue of drivers it's a very, very important issue, especially when in the region, because in most countries in the region, drivers are in short supply, and who are actually skilled and have PRDPs. They're in short supply. Why? Because some drivers are not prepared to drive across borders, and some drivers are not prepared to drive in certain times of the day where now there's peak and all that. And again, in other countries, you find that even the drivers that actually hold PRDP goods and have the license that are required, they're in short supply. Hence, you find that most countries allow foreign drivers to come in and drive. What we encourage is that whenever this happens, what is key is that proper national legislations or laws should be followed by the employing companies, so that we don't promote. We end up having these issues of saying foreigners are coming to take employment. But where proper procedures are followed, some of these problems we will not have that. I mean, we have read. I've had questions whereby someone was stopped at the border coming into Namibia. They were driving a Namibian truck, but they were foreigners, and they were stopped at the border. Yet Namibia allows foreign drivers to drive. The issue now is that the person did not have proper, papers. Did not have. For you to do that, you should actually have a work permit. Yes. Yeah. They did not have a work permit.
I would imagine this is a topic that we could spend a lot of time on.
A lot of time in it.
Unfortunately, we've run out of that time. So I just want to go back to Elias quickly on that sulfur question. Elias, what is the question goes around the upgrade of the facility for sulfur in the port. Can you throw a little bit of light on that? And we really are out of time now, Jen, so I'm going to ask you to just keep it brief. You're on mute, Elias. Elias, your mic is on mute. There we go.
Yes, I don't really want to touch much on the current development of the sulfur infrastructure at the port, because it's a process that's ongoing, but it's definitely on the card, and we are expecting the facility to be up and running by the end of November.
Good. Hopefully that answers the question for Vic. And then we're going to close with it's a joint question from both Graham and Nati. Also to you, Elias, they're basically inquiring around, and you've mentioned today the way you want to stay competitive and reduce operating costs is through technology. And they're both asking questions about digitization, automation, maritime and logistics software, etc. and where that's going to. I think in the main you've given some answers, but I think Graham's answer, Graham has a follow-up question, and he says, how will that be funded? And maybe Graham wants to fund it. Maybe Graham and yourself need to have a chat. But he's asking that question. Does the corridor or Namport itself has sufficient funds to meet these type of technological advances that are going to keep you cost competitive?
Yes, well, we call it the automation project. We have availed funds from our balance sheet to fund the project.
Perfect. I think that was a short and sweet answer. Gentlemen, I think you've done your corridor proud today. Thank you for all of these presentations and the very frank and forthright answers from all of the questions, which I believe were all good questions. Thanks to people like Josephat, Richard, that posed questions about the growth, etc., which I felt were answered within the presentation. So I didn't pose those questions particularly. But yeah, thank you very, very much for a very good job of presenting the corridor. And I wish you all the best post-COVID with the growth and resuscitation of the corridor and all of these wonderful projects you have in mind. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for having me.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Stan.
Yes. Okay.
Before you leave, gentlemen, thank you again. And thank you to everybody for attending. Stan, another well-moderated and solid performance, unlike your team Liverpool, but that's another webinar discussion. And I'd like to thank our panelists, Hippie, Elias, and Leslie. Thank you, gentlemen, for sharing the information with us. I think it's always a good indication from these digital sessions when the audience are asking questions that we can't actually have time to answer. Rest assured, what we will be doing is we compile these questions, we share it with the panelists, we try to compile as many answers as we possibly can, and we'll share the answers to these questions along with this recording and the link to Hippie's presentation as well will be made available in the next week. We thank you again for joining us. I know there were a couple of questions related to Transnamib Rail who aren't here today. That's because in 2 weeks' time we'll be joined by Johnny Smith, the CEO of Transnamib, who will be sharing the stage for coffee with the CEO, and there's something posted in the chat function. So if you'd like to register for that or find out more information, you can contact us. And we have a lot of digital sessions coming up the course of the next coming months: Zambia Rail, Transnet, Tangier Med in Morocco. So we're trying to cover the full spectrum of the African continent. And again, thank you to everybody for joining us, and please all stay safe. We'd also like to give one thank you also to More Global, our partners, which Stan's a part of, and thanks for the continuous support. So please stay safe, and we'll see you hopefully in 2 weeks' time for the next session. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, gents.
Yes.
All the best.